Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Have 24 hours passed already? How did that happen? Is it just me, or is the Earth spinning faster on its axis? Or am I simply getting old? Well, all that are topics for another day, but today I want to get back to my favourite pastime, which is taking a peek behind the curtain at all those tech experiences that we take for granted when opening up something like Netflix. So today I've invited Mark Cusack from Yellowbrick Data onto the podcast to talk about real-time data warehousing and learn about the future of a faster, more flexible cloud data warehouses and how it's a must for data professionals and IT leaders from all industries. And before joining Yellowbrick Data, I feel I must point out that Mark was a Vice President for Data and Analytics at Teradata, where he had led a variety of product management and technology teams in data warehouses and advanced analytics groups. And he was also Chief Architect of Teradata's IoT analytics effort. So I think he's going to have a lot of great stories to share. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to North Carolina in the US, where fellow Brit Mark Cusack is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure, Neil. Yeah, very nice to be here. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, my name's Mark Cusack. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Yellowbrick Data. And Yellowbrick provide a modern data warehouse for the hybrid cloud. And the company is fairly new, so you may not have come across us. We were founded in 2014, came out of stealth mode in 2017, but we've acquired quite an array of enterprise customers in the data warehousing space over that time. And I've actually only been CTO at Yellowbrick for about 6 months now. And before that, I worked at Teradata, where I was the Vice President for product management, responsible for the data warehousing software business at Teradata, and also some of the machine learning kind of aspects of the portfolio there too. And I got to Teradata by way of an acquisition they made of a startup that I co-founded called Rainstore out of the UK originally. And then when that got acquired, we moved to the US, and I'm based over in the US right now.
Fantastic. And for people just hearing about you for the first time, Yellowbrick Data is often described as a modern data warehouse for hybrid cloud. But can you set the scene and tell me more about who your customers are and the kind of problems that you're solving for them?
Yeah. And, if you decompose the modern data warehouse and the hybrid cloud pieces very quickly, what we mean by modern data warehouse is that we've built an MPP scale-out data warehouse from the ground up. And it's fully SQL 2011 compliant. We actually look and feel from the outside like Postgres. And so although under the hood things are very, very different, and we scale to petabytes of data and thousands of concurrent users, we look and feel from the outside like Postgres. So all of the ecosystem around Postgres just works with us. Now, the hybrid cloud side of things means that we can effectively deploy our data warehouse solution anywhere, whether that's on private clouds, in customers' own data centers, or through the public clouds as well. And maybe we'll get a chance to chat about it a bit later on, but we've got some exciting announcents coming out around work we're doing to push Yellowbrick capabilities towards the network edge. And love to talk to you about that. But just to get to the core of your question around our customers, I mean, our customers are the biggest enterprises in the world, and they're the kinds of customers that demand mission-critical availability 24/7. They're typically in the financial services or insurance or telco space, but we've got customers in a broad range of verticals as well. But, I mean, Neil, you may not have thought you used Yellowbrick before, but if you've ever purchased anything online that isn't through Amazon, if you go through Netflix, airline tickets, credit card issuers, then LexisNexis is a customer of ours powers their online fraud detection application that supplies and supports all these other businesses through Yellowbrick. And so 24/7, if your online purchases are going on and something dodgy happens, then Yellowbrick is there processing 150 million transactions a day, 5 billion transactions a month to keep your transactions secure. We've got other examples. One of the largest credit card companies in the world standardized on Yellowbrick as their enterprise data warehouse, and they use it for their loyalty program, and they use it for their data scientists to do ad hoc queries over petabytes of data. And we went in and ended up replacing legacy data warehouses that they had there, and also data lakes. So many examples of where we've kind of gone in at these customers and brought them up to speed on a modern data warehouse.
You've just ticked all the boxes for a great guest for me, because I love, as the kind of guy that when he goes into an entertainment venue, I'll be looking behind the curtain, looking where those wireless arrays are and things. I love being able to take a peek behind the curtain, and love how, like you said, if you've used Netflix, you've actually used Yellowbrick Data without even knowing about it. But I'm curious, have you seen how have you seen enterprises explore new ways to succeed and grow over the last 12 months? Because it has been a turbulent time. There's been a lot of talk about that, but how have you seen enterprises change?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been an awful 12 plus months, hasn't it? And I think enterprises have really had their ability to do business tested to the extreme. And I really do think any businesses that think they're going to be returning to business as usual are going to be really mistaken. And I've seen it in the customers I've spoken with, even those that are kind of far along the digital transformation path. This sort of unprecedented things we saw last year really caused cracks in their operations as well. I mean, if you look at kind of three things that stand out for me over the last year and companies' reactions to them, obviously buying habits changed overnight back in spring, didn't they? We were all rushing around trying to find consumer products that we couldn't find, and a huge sort of knock-on strain on supply chains, on inventory management. And, all those kind of existing demand forecasting models were kind of thrown out the window, 12 months ago. And, we had the working and learning from home situation, which put enormous strain and stress on corporate VPNs and things like that. And there was a big shift in moving many of the kind of supporting services in our businesses out into cloud-based IT as a service. But one that actually stands out for me that's a bit of a sea change is that I've seen that CIOs are starting to rethink the journey they're taking towards the public cloud. I mean, many had this kind of public cloud first mandate over the last couple of years to go all in on the cloud and kind of burn the ships of their on-premises data centers. And I've seen over this year, folks take a little bit more of a considered approach because of some of the high-profile outages you've seen in public clouds and some of the security breaches for the cloud-only data warehouses, that they're going, well, maybe it makes sense for some of our use cases to remain in private cloud in our own data centers, and some others, it does make sense to go into the public cloud. And so what I've seen more than anything, I think, is this move towards a hybrid stance in terms of how they consume data warehousing.
And how do you think data warehouses will be used to support artificial intelligence and machine learning-led applications? Because, again, there's a big, heavy focus on that area at the moment, isn't there?
Yeah, that's an interesting area. And I was lucky enough at Teradata to own both the machine learning portfolio and the data warehousing portfolio. So I sort of saw these two, what seemed to be very different application areas in technologies, kind of come together. And I do think it's going to be really important in data warehousing, but they're going to be used for a specific part, I think, of the machine learning process. If you think about machine learning breaking down into kind of three stages, ABCs of machine learning, you do your data preparation, which you extract your features. Then you use those engineered features to train your models, and then you deploy your models into production and you score your models and your data that comes through, and that's how the process typically works. And I think data warehouses are going to be really useful as feature stores. So once you grab those features, and you can imagine also using data warehouses and all the kind of ETL processing capabilities they have to refine data, to get that raw, ugly data into a highly structured format that kind of really represents your engineered features for your models. And they're going to be used for storing that. And just why I think that is going to happen is you almost go back 30, 40 years to the rise of data warehouses in the first place. And, I mean, I'm kind of old, but not that old enough to know how things went down then. And back in the day when people were looking at putting together reporting in their businesses 30 or 40 years ago, they were very much kind of stovepipe operations. You'd gather some data, you do some COBOL programming or whatever, and then you get your results out in some fanfold paper or primitive sort of display. And that would be a kind of a single BI reporting application. And you go off and people would do the same thing in their own silos, and you get all of these different separate BI reports coming around. And then someone had the bright idea, well, why don't we store all this data in a centralized data warehouse? And so all the applications can share and reuse that data in a the model data that's in there and get that value from data reuse. And fast forward to machine learning, and I see it happening exactly the same way. Imagine taking a bunch of engineered features and sticking them in a data warehouse with appropriate joins and data modeling on it. And then there you go, you can start to reuse these features around the business and really deliver a lot more value faster from machine learning.
And something else I'm reading more and more about is the emergence of specialized hardware instances for optimal price performance in the cloud and on premises, especially at a time where many businesses are trying to do more with less. But can you expand on that and what you've seen in the industry?
Yeah. When you look at the broad landscape of what we have today, you have the kind of legacy data warehouse providers. You've got kind of those query engines that sit alongside the data lakes. You hear terms like data lake house coming around now, but I'm thinking of things like Presto and Impala and Delta Lake and things like that. And then you have the new breed of public cloud data warehouse providers like Redshift and Snowflake and BigQuery. And so that kind of sets the scene. But one thing I think is common across all of them is that they only optimize their software. So they don't have that additional dimension of being able to optimize both the software and the hardware. And so what we've done at Yellowbrick is design software that's extremely adaptive to understanding the underlying hardware that it runs on. And so for customers that want absolutely top level availability and high level fastest performance, they'll deploy Yellowbrick in their private cloud or through public cloud on our own hardware, on our own specialized instances. And they'll get screaming performance out of that. It can be, we've seen 150x faster than other databases and data warehouses. And coupled with the low price that we offer, the price performance metric for Yellowbrick is just out of sight. But one of the really unique things that we do at Yellowbrick as well is the software will adapt to the underlying hardware platform. So if we find ourselves deployed in public cloud, we'll take advantage of the instance types that we're on. And if they're, for example, NVMe SSD backed instances, we will do things to optimize our data warehouse capability and performance against that hardware. And so the software is really, really adaptable. When it's running on our own hardware, you get blistering performance, but we gracefully change that profile depending on the kind of virtualized instances we're running on it. I hope that makes sense. I mean, the core thing for us is we can optimize along two factors, software and hardware, and nobody else can do that. It means we have a price and performance that can't be matched.
And I'm curious, though, do you think the separation of data warehouse, compute and storage will actually go on to become the standard?
Yeah, and I think this is being driven primarily by cloud-based object stores and even on-prem object stores, frankly. People want the combination of a cheap and deep way of storing petabytes and petabytes of data. But they also want the high performance that you get out of a data warehouse. And so what you're seeing in the new breed of modern data warehouses are systems that will take advantage of that NVMe SSDs that are associated with ephemeral instances as the kind of high performance main store, but it's all backed by this separated object store as well. But customers I speak to want to be able to scale their compute and storage separately, and so it makes perfect sense.
And you recently announced a new partnership with a company called G2O. So can you tell me more about that and how you're helping customers unlock the value in their data?
Yeah, G2O are one of the kind of key digital transformations and experience shops in the Midwest for us. And it's yet another step in gaining a stronger and stronger portfolio of partners, particularly around the system integrator side of things as well. But G2O specialize in things like customer experience. And that's incredibly important to Yellowbrick because actually, if you look about 80% of the use cases that data warehouses are put to, they typically are some customer journey, customer 360, customer experience kind of use case. And so partnering with someone like G2O is important for us because it means that we've got the subject matter expertise there around the integrations to really deliver value to the customers who are going to be using Yellowbrick as a back end for their CX solutions. Yeah, so that's probably the key thing for me. And I just add, we have a very, very strong partner play at Yellowbrick. We're not interested in creating our own professional services division or anything like that. We want to partner with these end integrators and enable our customers through those partners.
And Yellowbrick also hosted its first annual virtual event, and there's a lot of focus on virtual events with physical events being locked down right now, and it's something that I miss, and I'm sure you do too. But I'm curious, how did it go, and what lessons did you learn that might help any other business leaders thinking of doing a similar event themselves?
Well, yeah, I mean, Yellowbrick hosted our first annual event, actually. It was in September 2020. And not surprisingly, it was virtual. So that made it a little bit more interesting. But it was a great opportunity for us to invite partners, customers, and analysts to take part and share their thoughts on evolving needs and requirements for analytics platforms in general. And we got some really great insights from them. And our CEO, Neil Carson, he presented his view of real-time analytics and specifically what customers should expect from their analytics systems and why analytics are even more critical in this kind of era of disruption that we have today. And, what was really very cool, actually, is that we had 500 attendees at that online event, which is, we're a fairly small startup. So we were incredibly pleased for that. I mean, in terms of tips and tricks, we did record much of the content in advance, just for practicality's sake. And we also used a small video company, actually, to help make sure that the production values were good. So I'd advise that. And then we did things like work with some of the speakers in advance to make sure they had good lighting and cameras. And we even had one of our partners switch to a different room, which had a really cool background in his house. And so we hosted that event on yellowbrick.com. We even had our SE team standing by online chat to answer questions online. So, we could make it interactive, but make sure we had good production values and the content to go with it. And it was successful enough, to be honest, that we're going to do it again at the end of April. And April 29th, we've got another virtual summit, and we've got some really big product announcements coming, and we're going to be talking about all the details there.
Oh, I do love a good teaser as well. I'm curious, do you think that data warehouses will become a critical capability for enabling real-time business decision-making? Because we've seen a lot of focus at the moment about data-driven decision-making, but almost feels like real-time business decision-making is next. And what is it that excites you about that road ahead?
Yeah, I mean, the real-time stuff is critical. It's gonna separate the winners in this market from the also-rans. I mean, if you look at a lot of the legacy data warehouses like Teradata, Oracle, and those others, they're just not equipped for dealing with real-time feeds. And Yellowbrick is. I mean, we can stream records in from Kafka feeds, from Kafka topics rather, at 3 million records a second, as well as bulk loading data in at vast speeds as well. And we can process that stuff on the fly as well. And going back to that example that I mentioned around the supply chain disruption, I mean, you want to be able to have real-time insights into your supply chains, being able to update your suppliers and partners in real time. You want to be able to react to customers that are having a poor customer experience with your enterprise as fast as possible, and intercept them before they get to the point where they want to make that call to the call center. And so the realm of real-time analytics and really getting that on the moment, on the button picture of your customers, for example, is going to be really important. I mean, though, in general, though, if I step back and think of what's really exciting for me and where I think things are going to get shaken up over the next couple of years, I think it's the next evolution in where cloud is going. And we talked about hybrid cloud, that kind of separation between on-prem, private clouds and public clouds. But think about the next step beyond that. And the next step beyond that is something called distributed clouds. This is the idea where we'll take the public cloud hardware and software stack and be able to deploy it anywhere. And you're seeing this in AWS with their Outpost, or Google with Anthos, and Azure with Azure Stack. And what you're going to get is the ability to run cloud services, not just in public cloud data centers, but in your own data center and also at the network edge. And you'll have this uniformity across all clouds in this distributed cloud format with a single control plane. And so what we've been thinking about at Yellowbrick is how we build on distributed clouds that are kind of emerging now. And we've come up with this idea, this concept called a distributed data cloud, which is all of those data analytics services that would lie on top of a distributed cloud to provide that federated, easy to use, deliver anywhere, run anywhere experience. So for me, watch this space, because I think distributed data clouds are going to be really big.
A fantastic moment to end the conversation on as well. But for anyone listening that want to find out more information, keep up to speed with the developments, and also find out more information about that virtual event in April, can you remind the listeners of where they can find you online and also contact your team?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Mark Cusack, all one word. If you want to contact our team to hear more about the virtual event, drop us a line at info@yellowbrick.com or send me an email if you like, mark.cusack@yellowbrick.com. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, and I'd love to catch up and have a chat.
Well, there's just so many exciting things happening in this space at the moment, such as data warehouses being used to support this vast amount of artificial intelligence and machine learning applications. It's easy to see why the separation of data warehouse, compute and storage is going to become the standard. We could talk for hours about this stuff. I would be checking out your virtual event myself, but more than anything, just thank you for coming on and sharing all that with me today.
Well, Neil, it's absolutely my pleasure. Thanks very much.
So many big takeaways from Mark there, such as the ways that 2020 challenged enterprises to find new ways to succeed and grow, but how data warehouses will be used to support artificial intelligence and machine learning applications, not to mention the emergence of specialized hardware instances for optimal price performance in the cloud and on premises, are becoming a critical capability for enabling real-time business decision-making. Not just data-driven, but real-time decision-making. But this is the part of the show where I turn the microphone over to you and ask you to send me an audio message on your favourite social platform. Just hold down that record button on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. Send me an audio message that we can play on the show, and you'll find me nice and easy on just about anything at Neil C. Hughes. Or if you prefer the traditional email approach, email me techblogwriter@outlook.com. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk, where there are over 1,550 podcast interviews as we run up to 5 years of this podcast. How crazy is that? I think it's 5 years in the end of June or early July. So we'll have a big celebration later on in the year. But keep those messages coming in. I invite you to join me again tomorrow, where we'll do it all again. But more than anything, just thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.